The Magic of Reading Club. The old bookshop on Maple Street stood like a guardian of stories, its weathered brick facade telling tales of its own. Inside, 12-year-old Lily Morgan sat cross-legged in her favorite corner, surrounded by towers of books that reached toward the ceiling like miniature skyscrapers. The afternoon sun filtered through dusty windows, creating dancing patterns on the worn wooden floor, and the familiar scent of aged paper and leather bindings filled the air. "Lily, dear, are you planning to move in?" Mrs. Patterson, the elderly bookshop owner, called out with a warm chuckle. Her silver hair was tied in a neat bun and reading glasses hung from a chain around her neck. Lily looked up from her worn copy of The Secret Garden and grinned. "Maybe." "There's just so much magic here, Mrs. Patterson. Each book is like a door to somewhere new." It was then that an idea struck her, bright and brilliant as a shooting star. Why keep all this magic to herself? In her small town of Millbrook, where entertainment often meant staring at phones or playing video games, Lily knew there had to be others who would love to discover the enchanting world of books. The next day at Millbrook Middle School, Lily approached her lunch table with determination. Her best friend Emma Chen was already there, dark hair falling over her face as she sketched in her notebook. Jake Rodriguez, the class comedian, was attempting to balance a spoon on his nose, while Noah Thompson, the quietest of their group, was absorbed in a comic book. "I have an idea," Lily announced, placing her hands on the table with dramatic flair. "We should start a reading club." Jake's spoon clattered to the table. "A reading club? Like voluntarily reading more than we have to?" "Not just reading," Lily explained, her green eyes sparkling with excitement. "It's about bringing stories to life. We could have adventures, solve mysteries, and explore new worlds, all from my backyard." Emma looked up from her sketch, intrigued. "Could we draw the characters we read about?" "Absolutely. And Noah, you could use different voices for different characters, like you do when you tell your sister bedtime stories." Noah blushed slightly but smiled. That could be fun." The following Saturday, Lily transformed her backyard into a reading haven. Her father helped her hang fairy lights in the old oak tree, and her mother contributed a basket of freshly baked cookies and lemonade. Comfortable cushions and blankets were scattered on the grass, and a wooden chest, borrowed from Mrs. Patterson, sat mysteriously in the center, filled with carefully selected books. As her friends arrived, Lily could barely contain her excitement. Emma brought her art supplies, Jake arrived with a dramatically suspicious expression, claiming he was just checking it out, and Noah clutched a book of his own, half hidden behind his back. "Welcome to the first meeting of the Magic Reading Club," Lily declared, standing beside the chest. She lifted the lid with a flourish, revealing books of all sizes and colors. "Today we're going to learn that reading isn't just about words on a page, it's about bringing stories to life." She pulled out a book bound in midnight blue leather, its cover decorated with silver stars. "This," she said, "is where we'll begin our adventure." As Lily began to read, something magical happened. Her voice changed with each character, deep and growly for the dragon, proud and brave for the knight, mysterious and wise for the old wizard. Emma's pencil flew across her sketchpad, capturing the scenes as they unfolded. Jake, despite his initial skepticism, found himself leaning forward, completely absorbed in the tale. Noah's eyes grew wide with wonder, and occasionally he would whisper the dramatic lines along with Lily. When she paused at a particularly tense moment, Jake burst out, "You can't stop there." "What happens next?" Lily smiled knowingly. "That's the beauty of it. What do you think happens next?" What followed was an explosion of creativity. Each friend had their own theory, and soon they were acting out different possible scenarios. Emma's drawings became their storyboard, Jake's natural humor brought laughter to every scene, and Noah's quiet observations added depth to their interpretations. As the afternoon sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, none of them wanted the day to end. They had discovered something precious, not just the joy of reading, but the magic of sharing stories together. "Same time next week?" Lily asked hopefully. "Try and stop us," Jake declared. already reaching for another book from the chest. That was just the beginning. Each week, the Magic Reading Club grew more elaborate. They created character costumes from old clothes and bed sheets. Emma's drawings decorated the oak tree, creating a changing gallery of their adventures. Jake started bringing his mother's voice recorder to capture their dramatic readings, and Noah slowly began to overcome his shyness, becoming their master of sound effects. Word spread through Millbrook Middle School. Soon, other students began asking if they could join. Rather than make their small group larger, Lily had a better idea. She taught her friends how to start their own reading clubs. Like seeds scattered in the wind, new reading groups sprouted across town. Some met in backyards like theirs, others gathered in the park or at the library. Mrs. Patterson's bookshop became a bustling hub of young readers, each seeking their next adventure. But the original Magic Reading Club remained special. As seasons changed, their friendship grew stronger, rooted in the stories they shared. Winter brought new magic to the Magic Reading Club. The old oak tree, now bare of leaves, sparkled with frost and fairy lights. Lily's mother had supplied them with thick blankets and thermos bottles filled with hot chocolate. The cold weather couldn't dampen their enthusiasm for stories. If anything, it made their cozy reading corner feel even more magical. One snowy afternoon, Emma arrived with exciting news. "Mrs. Patterson is holding a storytelling competition at the bookshop," she announced, her cheeks still rosy from the cold. Jake nearly dropped his hot chocolate. "A competition? What kind of competition?" "Each group has to create and perform their own original story," Emma explained, pulling out a colorful flyer from her backpack. Noah's eyes widened with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Create our own story," he whispered. Lily jumped up, nearly spilling her cocoa. "This is perfect. We've been reading and acting out stories for months now. We can definitely write our own." The next few weeks were filled with creative chaos. Emma's sketchbook became their story Bible, filled with character designs and plot ideas. Jake insisted their tale needed a dragon who was afraid of heights. Noah suggested the dragon could overcome its fear by helping someone else. Lily wove all their ideas together, creating a story about friendship, courage, and believing in yourself. They called it The Sky-Scared Dragon. Mrs. Patterson cleared the entire back room of her bookshop for the competition. 6 reading clubs from around town had entered. Parents, teachers, and other students packed into the space, sitting on chairs, cushions, and even cross-legged on the floor. The Magic Reading Club would perform last. As they watched the other groups present their stories, Lily felt butterflies in her stomach. Some of the other tales were really good. Finally, it was their turn. They had created simple costumes. Jake wore cardboard wings painted in shimmering green, courtesy of Emma's artistic skills. Noah wore a wizard's robe made from an old curtain. Emma had transformed herself into a forest sprite with face paint and paper flowers. Lily stepped forward as the narrator, her voice clear and strong. "Once upon a time, in a world where dragons ruled the skies, there lived a very special dragon named Pip. What happened next was better than anything they had rehearsed." Jake brought Pip the dragon to life, making the audience laugh with his comedic portrayal of a dragon who got dizzy on tall ladders. Noah's wizard spoke in riddles that actually made sense, his voice growing more confident with each line. Emma danced through her role as the sprite, her movements as graceful as leaves in the wind. When Pip finally overcame his fear to save a young bird that had fallen from its nest, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The audience erupted in applause when they finished. Mrs. Patterson wiped a tear from her eye as she stood to announce the winners. "In all my years of selling books," she said, "I've never seen young people bring a story to life quite like this." The Magic Reading Club won first place, but the real prize wasn't the blue ribbon or the gift certificates to the bookshop. It was the knowledge that they had created something magical together. That evening, as they celebrated with pizza in Lily's backyard, they made plans for their next story. "We could write about a library that comes alive at midnight," Emma suggested, sketching ideas in her notebook. "Or a bookmark that transports readers into their stories," Jake added, gesturing dramatically with a slice of pizza. Noah, more animated than ever, pitched in, "What if we wrote about a group of friends who discover a magical book club?" They all looked at each other and burst out laughing. Sometimes the best stories are the ones you're living. The competition changed something in their little group. They were no longer just readers, they were storytellers too. Other kids started coming to them for writing advice. The school newspaper asked them to contribute a monthly story. Even their teachers noticed the difference in their creativity and confidence. One day, Ms. Thompson, their English teacher, asked them to present to the class about the power of storytelling. Standing in front of their classmates, each member of the Magic Reading Club shared what they had learned. Emma showed how art could bring stories to life. Jake demonstrated how humor could make any tale more engaging. Noah explained how different voices could create entire worlds. And Lily talked about the magic that happens when friends share stories together. As spring returned to Millbrook, the Magic Reading Club had grown in ways none of them had expected. They weren't just better readers, they were better friends, better creators, and better dreamers. The old oak tree in Lily's backyard had witnessed countless stories, both read and created. But the best story of all was the one about four friends who discovered that books were just the beginning of their adventures. Mrs. Patterson often said that books were bridges to new worlds. The Magic Reading Club had proven her right. They had built bridges between imagination and reality, between stories and friendship, between who they were and who they could become, and they were just getting started. Spring brought unexpected challenges to the Magic Reading Club. Middle school was ending and high school loomed on the horizon. "Will we still keep the club going?" Noah asked one afternoon, his voice tinged with worry. Lily looked up at the oak tree, its new leaves rustling in the warm breeze. "Of course we will," she said firmly, "but things might need to change a little." Emma closed her sketchbook thoughtfully. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." Jake nodded, unusually serious. "We could make it even better." They spent that afternoon brainstorming ways to evolve their beloved club. High school would mean more homework, different schedules, and new responsibilities, but it also meant they could tackle more complex stories. They could explore deeper themes. They could connect reading with their growing interests. Emma wanted to study classic artists and illustrate famous scenes from literature. Jake discovered a passion for writing scripts, turning traditional stories into modern plays. Noah's voice had deepened, giving him a whole new range for character performances, and Lily found herself drawn to writing her own original stories inspired by their years of reading together. They decided to meet every other Saturday instead of weekly. The sessions would be longer, more intensive, and even more creative. They transformed Lily's backyard into different themed spaces each time they met. One weekend it became an ancient Greek amphitheater for performing The Odyssey. Another time they turned it into a Victorian parlor for a Jane Austen discussion. They even created a makeshift radio studio to record their own audiobook versions of their favorite stories. Their reputation grew beyond Millbrook Middle School. The local library invited them to host monthly reading workshops for younger kids. "Remember how we started?" Lily asked as they prepared for their first workshop. "Now we get to share that magic with others." The workshops became a huge success. Children sat spellbound as Noah performed character voices. They gathered around Emma as she taught them to draw their favorite scenes. Jake had them laughing with his interactive storytelling games, and Lily showed them how to find the extraordinary in ordinary stories. But the biggest challenge came when Mrs. Patterson announced her retirement. The beloved bookshop might have to close. "We can't let that happen," Lily declared during an emergency club meeting. The bookshop was where their story had begun. It had been their source of inspiration, their treasure trove of adventures. They organized a Save the Stories campaign. Emma designed posters that seemed to come alive with magical characters. Jake wrote and performed a series of promotional videos that went viral in their small town. Noah overcame his stage fright to speak at the town council meeting, and Lily wrote an article for the local newspaper about how one bookshop had changed countless lives. The whole town rallied around them. Parents who had watched their children blossom through reading stepped forward to help. Other reading clubs joined their campaign. Even the mayor who remembered buying his first book from Mrs. Patterson got involved. In the end, the bookshop was saved. A group of local investors purchased it, with Mrs. Patterson staying on as a special advisor. They even created a dedicated space for reading clubs to meet during bad weather. The Magic Reading Club had helped preserve a piece of their town's heart. As their first year of high school began, they found their club had given them unexpected advantages. Their reading comprehension scores were off the charts. Their creativity shone in every class. Teachers noticed their ability to analyze, interpret, and present ideas. But more importantly, they had something many freshmen didn't. They had a sanctuary. Every other Saturday, no matter how hectic life became, they had their special place under the oak tree. They had their stories. They had each other. One autumn afternoon, as golden leaves drifted around them, Lily shared something special. "I've been working on a book," she announced shyly. "It's about 4 friends who discover the magic of reading." Her friends fell silent, understanding the significance. "Read it to us," Noah asked softly. And so, under the same tree where countless stories had been shared, Lily began to read their own story. The old bookshop on Maple Street stood like a guardian of stories. Emma's pencil moved across her sketchbook, capturing the scenes they had lived. Jake closed his eyes, remembering their first meeting. Noah smiled, knowing how far they had all come. Their story was still being written. New chapters waited to be discovered, but they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, the Magic Reading Club would face them together. Because some friendships, like the best stories, only get better with time. 10 years passed like pages turning in a favorite book. The old oak tree in Lily's backyard had grown taller, its branches stronger. The Magic Reading Club members had grown too, but their love for stories remained unchanged. Lily became an English teacher at Millbrook Middle School. Every day she created the same magic for her students that Mrs. Patterson had once shared with her. Her classroom became a haven for dreamers and storytellers. She started a new generation of reading clubs, remembering how it all began. Emma's artistic talent bloomed into a career as a children's book illustrator. Her first published work was a collaboration with Lily, their story of the sky-scared dragon finally in print. The book's dedication page read, "To the Magic Reading Club, where every story found its wings." Jake surprised everyone by becoming a drama teacher. He specialized in adapting literature into plays for young performers. His students learned that every book could become a stage, every reader an actor. Noah's quiet confidence led him to become a voice actor for audiobooks. His reading of The Sky-Scared Dragon won an industry award. "It's a story I've known by heart since childhood," he said in his acceptance speech. Mrs. Patterson's old bookshop, now called Patterson's Literary Haven, thrived under its new management. A wall of photos near the entrance showed reading clubs through the years. The original Magic Reading Club photo held a special place of honor. 4 young faces smiled out from the frame, surrounded by books and possibilities. On a warm Saturday afternoon, much like the one where their story began, they gathered again under the oak tree. Lily brought her worn copy of The Secret Garden, the book she'd been reading that fateful day. Emma carried her original sketchbook, its pages yellow with age but filled with magical memories. Jake had their old voice recordings preserved and digitized. Noah brought their first edition copy of The Sky-Scared Dragon. They sat in their old spots, muscle memory guiding them home. "Do you remember when we thought high school might end the club?" Jake asked, laughing. Emma opened her sketchbook, sharing the drawings that had captured their journey. "Look how young we were," she marveled. Noah cleared his throat and began to read from their book, his voice bringing Pip the dragon to life once more. Lily looked around at her friends, her heart full. They had grown up, moved forward, built careers and lives. But here, under the oak tree, they were still those same kids who believed in the magic of stories. "We should do something special," Lily suggested, "for the next generation of readers." They decided to create a foundation. The Magic Reading Club Foundation would support literacy programs and reading clubs across the country. It would provide books to underfunded schools. It would sponsor storytelling competitions. It would help other kids discover the magic they had found. Mrs. Patterson, now in her 80s, cried when they told her their plan. You see, she said, wiping her eyes, books don't just tell stories, they create them. As the sun began to set, casting familiar shadows through the oak leaves, they shared one more story. It was about four friends who discovered that reading wasn't just about words on a page, it was about connection. It was about growth. It was about finding magic in the ordinary. It was about keeping your heart open to possibilities. Above all, it was about believing that every ending could be a new beginning. The Magic Reading Club had taught them that some stories never really end. They just keep growing, like rings in a tree, marking time and experience. And somewhere in Millbrook, another group of friends was just discovering the magic of reading together. Another story was just beginning, because that's the thing about stories. They belong to everyone who believes in them. And as long as there are readers, dreamers, and friends willing to share their love of books, the magic will always continue. The end. But perhaps like all the best stories, this is really just another beginning.